Hey, what's up people? PushdaButtons here, and today's video covers 15 best tips for becoming a pro healer in Paladins. Going through this support guide will help you better understand how support class works in general, and what are the mistakes probably you've been making all these days which was leading you to underperform. And by the way, no matter if you're a beginner or have been playing around for a while, I promise you'll definitely find something in the video that's gonna help you to improve, or at least gonna jog your memory. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Starting things off with the core basics, and we'll gradually move on to the pro and the advanced section. Tip number 1. Pick the right support. Each support has their own distinctive playstyle, which needs to be maintained in order to get the best out of that supportive character. For instance, in a ranked draft, if your enemy team is running too much AoE power or too much firepower in general, then one or two things you can do to keep up with the draft. 1. Pick an AoE support or a burst healing support and heal the funk out of your teammates so the damage won't bother them too much during their point fights. Similarly, you can pick a support with high utility and help assist your teammates by adding an extra pair of hands to their duels. Or pick a support which can amplify your allies' damage or movement, or gives them CC resistance or DR, and give your team an early advantage in the game. In the end, it all matters how well you know your supportive characters and how well you can pick and play one to keep up with the draft. Too complicated? Well, everything will make sense. Don't worry, I got you. Tip number 2. Try and have expertise on multiple support characters. If your enemy somehow bans or takes your favorite meta support, then you can always bring in the challenge if you know which support can perform better in your fallen situation. For that, you have to have good experience over other supports. So don't just one trick one or two meta or OP support and be chill with it. Keep flexing around other supports as well. Tip number 3. Positioning. This is the reason why this class gets the most blame out of playing any other role in Paladins. This is by far one of the most important part, and the main reason why most people don't want to pick and play support is because either they mess up with the positioning or just fail to maintain the team formation. Ideally, a support always sticks with the backline. The standard formation is 2 tanks fighting up front, team flanker making position in the flank routes in left or right, and the team DPS sticking close to the support and moving in between the space of tank and the support. If somehow your position is too close to your tanks or too far back, then you're most likely going to be picked by the enemy team, and in that case, pointing fingers won't help, and trust me, it never did. Stretching positioning to another tip, which is tip number 4, hide and heal. Every map will come with great hiding spots where you can poke and heal your allies from. For instance, in Serpent Beach, if you position yourself in the back of your high ground, then you can hide yourself near this big grumpy pillar and do both. Heal on point and heal on the right flank route, and also in addition, you can keep track of your left flank route as well, in case if someone's trying to go for a hard flank on you, or if a team member needs help. This is one of many examples of a spot where you'll be seeing most of the stuff that's going around during a fight and help assist your teammates from. So the idea of the positioning is both maintaining the formation, which I mentioned earlier, and also being able to stay in a place, mostly in a cover, from where you have your vision covering most of the areas of the map. Tip number 5. Everybody deserves your heals. You shouldn't only shove your heals on your tank's rear ends. Rather, keep in mind, everybody should be receiving it when needed. Most tanks have shielding, or a little bit of self-sustain, or high durability, which opens the door to not all the time throwing all the heals on the tanks, rather taking the advantage of the tank's self-sustain and focus on others when needed. I've fallen into this situation many times where a small heal could help me win my fight, but my team support was too busy sticking them heals on the tanks. All jokes aside, you really need to prioritize your healings. And speaking of prioritization, following up, we got tip number 6, who to heal. In the start of a round, usually team flanks always have the tendency to rush to the enemy backline, and it's most likely, almost of a guarantee they're gonna get cocky and get themselves into a messy fight at the start. So it's best to start pocketing them at first, so that your team flank gets a high chance of winning. So what you should do is put an early pocket on your allies whom you know are gonna get into trouble at the start. This term is also called healing ahead of time. Ideally, who should you heal is always situational, but mostly at the beginning of a round, always start with the teammates that are flanking, and then move on to the tank in the point, and then the damage. Sure, your healing priorities can switch up depending on whose life is in more danger and who needs the heal most, but most often, the mentioned priorities are the standard priorities when it comes to healing. So this means if your tank is in a safe place and getting out of combat heals, or just retreating safely in the battlefield, then focus healing your DPS or your flank so they get their job done or be able to slowly retreat and group up safely. Tip number 7. Never chase your allies for heals. This is all about common sense, and yet I find people struggling so much with it. Never ever chase your allies for heals, because not only it ruins the whole fact of what I told you about map controlling, but also you're gonna be a free kill. Because obviously you're literally giving away your valuable position to the enemy team. For a support, that's a big no-no. To help explain this tip better, first you gotta understand this is a tip that goes for both ends, the one that's healing and the one that's receiving. It's impossible for a healer to constantly heal you if you don't give them the proper line of sight. Same way, it's impossible for a healer to heal if he's constantly messing up with his positioning. Here's a simple visual explaining. In Fragile, if I'm playing Damba and camping here, then I have my visions over these highlighted areas, and as far as my healing range goes, I can heal anybody on these highlighted grounds. Now, this area of this map is called Jungle, and the place where I'm standing is called Worm. So if a teammate of mine is positioning or deciding to push in between jungle to jungle stairs, then for him, if he wants to receive my Damba heals, then from my position he has to give me line of sight from these two places, because it's obvious, if he pushes hard, then he'll show up here, and if he retreats, then he'll show up there, and if he does so, then I'll be able to back him up. Easy. There is no need for chasing. It's the support who needs the better positioning and better map and game sense. On the contrary though, if he's oblivious about his own positioning or plan and doesn't even care to think about giving me the proper line of sight, then his death is not on me. It's his fault he pushed recklessly, and usually these types of players are the reason why most beginner support players tend to chase them for heals and later on die alongside with them. Tip number 8. You're not a heal bot. The title of the tip is self-explanatory on its own. You're a support, means your role is to be supportive towards your teammates, so even under uncertain situations, they perform better by taking your assistance. So if your team DPS is struggling to fight with the enemy flanker, then don't just stand behind and be a heal bot. Heal him and then team up and shoot that pesky flanker down together. Two mind is always better than one, as the grandpa says. If your point tank is struggling to capture, then shoot the enemy tank alongside with your team DPS and off tank. These little fights that you take part in can create huge difference. Just use your kit with whatever utilities you have and help assist your teammates to make their life much easier. Those who denies it are actually dumb. Pro supports do carry, you just don't know it. They're the silent heroes. Tip number 9. Knowing when to ult. If you're one of the support players who saves his ult throughout the whole point fight and waits till the moment comes and then ults when nobody's around and flames on the teammates for not securing the kills, well, my god, not gonna say anything mean, but you really need this tip. If you're playing support, then from 3 ways you're gonna get your ult charges. 1, if you heal an ally, and if that ally of yours gets a kill, then through that kill you get an assist and some ult charges. 2nd, if you deal damage, then obviously you're gonna get some significant amount of ult charges. And most importantly, if you heal, then you get the most ult charges out of the rest. So combining, if you do your job properly, then you can charge and utilize your ult more frequently than any other class. Not going too deep about it, but long story short, supports usually have 2 types of ults: crowd or area controlling, and healing or damage buffs. And there's 2 times when an ult is mostly needed: during point fights and during the push. In between, well, to break choke points. However, for supports, it's also necessary to use ults to save teammates, cause saving one teammate in crucial time, using your ult can create huge difference, cause not only that teammate gets to stay alive, but also your ult might kill the enemy that was chasing him, and that's an instant advantage for your team to get a hold of. So as a support, don't be like those selfish pricks and wait till the entire fight to get to the right moment to use your ult, cause there's no point in ulting when nobody's around to take its advantage, and in this case, the only person that's literally the dumbest one in the team is actually you. Long story short, ult more frequently, you'll get it back. Tip number 10, the last tip before moving on to the advanced section, communicating. As a support, you're literally the eye for the whole team, cause as I mentioned earlier, positioning correctly as a support will allow you to cover your vision across most of the areas of the map, and you can easily give in the information about your enemy position to your allies, using the voice chat if your teammates are using it, or if not, then just simply using the VGS, which is actually my favorite to spam when I'm panicking. All in all, pro supports always stay aware and alerted, hence why it's so difficult to flank them, because they've seen you coming from miles away. Now, moving on, some of these tips are kinda controversial in nature, but it's necessary to discuss them, cause you guys really need to know. But you really don't have to agree or to disagree with any one of these tips if you're not into it. Tip number 11. Should you ever pick a DPS talent when playing support? Well, the answer to that question is, situationally, you should, cause there were times when ranked matchmaking was non-existent, and sweaty nutjobs like me, who don't wanna lose, usually takes the matter to their own hands. Cause quite frankly, you having beginner or qualifying players on your team while the enemy team having stacks of high plats or diamonds is nowhere near close in being fair. So in situations like this, I've used DPS talent on supports in the past. At the same time, trying my best in maintaining and keeping healing being one of my major priorities. Keep in mind, this becomes more of like a gamble. If your plan works out, then you're the hyper carry, and if not, then you're the main reason why your team will lose. So stay ready to take all the blames and the reports. Tip number 12. Manipulate your surroundings with your heals. Your healings can also be used to control your teammates. It's actually pretty dark for a tip, and I really don't know how it ended up here in my script, but you can actually do that. An example should help you understand better the whole theory. Sometimes you'll notice one of your off tank or flank, or it could be even your DPS, who suddenly dies just for being extremely cocky and reckless. Like they suddenly decide to jump out of the formation that was just beautiful, everything was just fine, until they did the dick move, and now that member dies, and another one dies, and another one, and it snowballs and ends up with you. Why this happened, if you may ask? Well, a common scenario is, if you're healing properly, then this made them think that they can literally be invincible no matter what, and they get so hyped and excited that they actually become oblivious about their own position and their objective. So to teach them a lesson, delay their heals. I mostly heal them when they're just about to die, but say if I miss and they did die, then still they're gonna learn from it and keep that in mind in the next round if they have a brain. And most importantly, healing is valuable and should not be taken for granted. Tip number 13. Atomization. Mostly for supportive characters, yellow items takes the higher priority, but in some cases playing in certain situations, you'll be needing blue items like Haven. Also in cases like playing ult heavy supportive characters like Furia or Ying, you'll be needing to use your ult more. So hence why buying Chronos 1 or 2, you need to focus investing on morale boost. Or if you just feel like your cooldowns being an issue in saving your allies, then maxing out Chronos should be a higher priority than any other item. It all depends what you feel is best for your fallen situation. Tip number 14. Be extremely careful during the zoning session. If your teammates are taking the lead and left you on the point to capture, then stay on the point, try to toss heals if possible, and keep on double checking the flank routes for the enemy flankers, and do not leave the point even if some of your teammates die for overextending, cause they're probably doing suicidal zoning or trade zoning just to buy some time so the point gets capped. So do not let them die in vain. Keep on capping, do not go out chasing them for heals. On the contrary, if the enemy is zoning, then try your best to stay alive, and if needed, die quickly so you get your spawn with your teammates and gear up and gather up quickly. On tip number 15, I'd like to wrap up the whole video showing my tier list for all the current supports available in the realm. This tier list is solely based on my personal opinion, and I'd be pretty happy if you go down in the comment section below and share me your personal opinion or your own tier list if you have one. And that's all there's to it. Hope you enjoyed. If you want to stay updated with my future uploads, then subscribing and turning on the bell icon is highly appreciated. And if you want to just hang out with us or want to help me out with my upcoming videos, then I highly recommend joining my Discord server, as we're all like a family there, and we invite you to have a tour and enjoy some chilling moments with us. And speaking of upcoming uploads, I have plans for making a video on Rei and talking about some pro tips about her playstyle and stuff, and also soon I'll be releasing a one tip for Vatu, and probably on Yagurath as well. So I really don't want any one of you to miss out any one of these. So keep on smashing those like buttons, subscribe to stay tuned, and stay strong and be positive with no matter what you're going through with your life. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.